Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
I am doing well, thank you.
Excellent.
Ready and raring to go to work.
That's right.
Save the world in our own hides, or take care of our concerns to get them off our chest. I think there's some good therapy in this, especially if we think we reach a person or two now and then, and that we move in the direction that we'd like to see the country and the world move.
Absolutely.
But I want to talk about a subject we've talked about before, and that's Yemen, and it's not getting any better. As a matter of fact, it's getting worse. It's been in the news in the last month or two, but it's been sort of pushed aside because of all this other exciting thing in the Mueller report and things like that. But I want to start off by saying how bad the policy's been, and there's no way we can duck responsibility for this. I mean, it's very, very clear. Although we do not have troops on the ground, we probably have CIA agents on the grounds and special forces, and we help tremendously, and we help the Saudis who are committing the actual crimes.
Yes.
And it's been going on 4 years, going into the fifth year again, and it was another political party other than the Trump party. Trump didn't start this. He's for it. And also, Obama, this was one of his dealings. He was very much involved and laid the plans for this. But it's been going on. And they thought, you read stories now, we thought it was going to be a cakewalk.
Yeah,
another cakewalk,
another
right?
cakewalk.
Because these were just a bunch of nomads, and they said that there's a large group. There was a demonstration, tens of thousands of Houthis came out demonstrating, and the main thing was, we don't want foreigners on our land.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of support for that. But the one statistic to me that stood out was the fact that all this bombing going on, and that's when we get very close to being really morally responsible for. 85,000 is estimated children under the age of 5 have starved to death.
It's terrible.
And it's supposed to be now considered one of probably the worst thing going on right now. You'd be much better off in the worst of communist countries. Not that I'm going to defend them, but at least you don't see as much starvation as we see in this type of a conflict. So to me, it's sad that we're participating in this, and the children are starving because we boycotted. There's only one port now. They don't raise food, and I think just recently we had this episode in Venezuela. They said that the good guys were coming. They wanted to take over. They're legitimate owners of the country, and we want to feed the people in Venezuela. And all of a sudden, the food is blown up, and there's a fire, and they didn't get it. And then there's the big argument. Oh yeah, Maduro's starving his own people, and so we haven't heard the last of that. But this is another incident of people starving, and it's not because of the people who have lived in Yemen for a long time all of a sudden wanted to have a war.
Yeah.
And they have participated in it. Anyway, the conflict continues, and the Senate and the House were involved in trying to stop this war a month or so ago, and shenanigans went on there, legislative shenanigans, and that failed, and they're trying once more here soon, maybe, and using the War Powers Resolution to say, time to quit, we're removing support, but they're using another angle to sort of put a monkey wrench in this.
Yeah, that is the case, and we should definitely get into how that works and what they're doing. But this is 4 years this week of this war. Trace it back to the beginning. 2011 is when the Arab Spring, the wonderful Arab Spring happened, and all this democracy was supposedly breaking out all over the Arab world. It was all a farce, but the president of Yemen was overthrown, and they put in a new guy. The guy ran for office. We're helping the Saudis restore democracy in Yemen. The guy ran for office. He was the only guy. He was the only name on the ballot, but he won, so he got a lot of votes. But then he was deposed by the Houthis. They didn't want him in power. They viewed him as a puppet. And so this is how it started back in 2015. The Saudis said, oh, no, you don't, and started bombing, destroyed the country, as you point out, the blockades, the sanctions. The most vulnerable people in society are suffering. Starvation is rampant. According to UN, 20 million Yemenis are in danger of starvation. 2/3 of the population in danger of starvation. We know that's a fact. But instead of the U.S. doing even a fraction of what they're doing in Venezuela, they're actually participating in it. So the hypocrisy, Dr. Paul, is so thick on this one, it's almost hard to stomach.
You know, a month ago, the anti-war people had a resolution to stop the war using the War Power Resolution as the vehicle, which we've talked about the controversy there. But anyway, the motivation was there to just stop it and use the authority we have, that Congress has, to stop this. And guess what? The roadblock was put up by Republican leadership. Yeah. They must like war or something. And the House had passed something, but they had put in an amendment on it that said that you have to condemn anti-Semitism, which, if there's a standalone thing in the on the House floor, and it says we don't like anti-Semitism, instead of, sometimes I think not necessary, but what's it going to hurt? Who's for it?
Yeah, exactly.
So they did that, and the way I understand it, the process then went to the Senate, and the Senate said, well, we can't deal. It doesn't fit the rules, so we have to throw it out. So they had to start all over again. Now they're in the middle of starting all over again, but it looks like the Republicans are trying to do the same thing. Put another monkey wrench in it. They do not want to see the American people speaking out through their elected officials and saying enough is enough. And yes, we know we're not having a lot of body bags, our body bags. Yeah. We're producing some, but we think this is way too much, and it's time to quit. And yet it looks like the real roadblock is coming from Republican leadership.
Yeah, in the House, for sure. In the Senate, which is Republican controlled, in the last Congress, they did pass it, and it was Senators Lee and Paul and a few others led the charge to pass this war powers resolution, telling the president that he can't be involved in Yemen. But the House, of course, under Ryan, they did some tricky things that I think were illegal, refused to even bring it to the floor. But now the Senate has passed it again, but the House, in a motion to recommit an amendment to the bill, put in something that was non-germane, as you point out, the condemnation of anti-Semitism. And I think it's a supremely cynical act on the part of House Republicans, because they knew that would negate its privileged position on the floor of the House to get a vote. And so the Senate said it's non-germane, the parliamentarian said it's non-germane, so you don't get your vote on it. And so they put this in there because they knew the Democrats couldn't vote against a condemnation of anti-Semitism, so it was a trap, using that as a trap to trap Democrats into really putting a bomb in the whole thing.
See, I think the nature of the politics of the Middle East has shifted a little bit because, the progressives who tend to be, more anti-war and more objective on what's going on in the Middle East have also, all of a sudden said that they're in disagreement with the leadership of the Democratic Party. So there are two factions there. A good progressive wants to, end the war. Yeah. At the same time, they're being trapped to say, to end the war, I have to vote, or to pretend we're ending the war, I have to vote against a resolution that's condemning anti-Semitism. So it's politics at its worst. Yeah. It's just, so I would assume, unless something special comes up, that a productive a piece of legislation is not going to come up that's going to move us in the direction of us getting out of this war.
And I would think that Jewish folks who are not happy about anti-Semitism would also be unhappy about this issue, which is a serious issue, being treated as a political football to prevent a war on Yemen. It's pretty sick, again, and cynical, right?
Yeah, but Trump's support for this war has been pretty clean cut, mainly because there's been no doubt that his support for Saudi Arabia is beyond it. Look how he has defied, the murder.
Khashoggi, yeah.
Khashoggi, but he still defended him and wants to stick with them, and of course he's very, very strong in support for Israel, and Israel's in support of the Saudis, and also subtly, if not openly, they at least use it as an excuse. Well, we better be careful, or Iran's going to take over Yemen.
Yeah.
I don't think Iran's going to have an easier time taking over Yemen than the Saudis. If the Saudis can't do it, and they're in their backyard, and they've been bombing them for 4 years, I can't imagine that happening. I don't think it would make any sense, and right now I don't think there's any strong evidence that they're not involved in anything like what the Saudis are in the United States and Israel.
Well, once again, they're making it happen with their stupid policy, because they say, oh, we got to go in there because the Yemenis are allying with the Iranians. It's not really true, but the fact that we have isolated Yemen so badly that they're looking for allies anywhere, and if they can find an ally in Iran might say, okay, let's help these guys out. So they're making, the U.S. and Saudis are making happen, which they say they're trying to prevent. It's a crazy situation.
And the one big thing, the immediate problem is the blockade.
Yeah.
Every once in a while in wartime, when things get bad, they take a pause and they exchange prisoners and they feed a couple people. But in this case, the blockade is the big deal, and that's what's causing the starvation, and yet that does not look like that's going to let up, and it is such a cruel way to fight a war. Is to starve the young people.
Yeah.
But and for me or you or any of us to say that we're participating in it. And the statistics were horrendous in Iraq. It was admitted by our Secretary of State that 500,000 young people, children, died due to our bombing and our sanctions in the 80s, or it was the 90s. It would have been in the 90s when we were leading up to a really good excuse so we could fight Saddam Hussein after us, destroying the country. That is so bad, and that is why. Of course, as a non-interventionist, it's easier for some people to see, well, I understand the military stuff, we don't do that. But humanitarianism, and we would sort of split onto anti-war left, progressives, when I was in office, because they would say, yeah, you're right, we don't want to send any weapons, but we have to send them the food. We have to send them the food. But first, the principle remains the same. Yes, if you're a humanitarian, you want to donate some money and send the Red Cross over there, that's one thing. Yeah. But to use tax authority is not technically constitutional to do this. So, but the whole thing is there's no practical benefit to it. This whole idea that if they could only get some food into these areas, whether it's Syria or in Yemen and Venezuela, all of a sudden, we'll get together and divide up the. No, they fight and scramble, and it's used as a weapon, to enhance the war. So the things that aren't so-called military really doesn't help things a whole lot, if anything, and it's tragic because it looks like this is going to continue for a while. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't know how quickly this will be resolved, but it looks like maybe in a week or so they might have a legislative conclusion here. But it doesn't look like there's many reasons for us to expect all of a sudden the House is going to match up what the Senate has done. I guess we have a little bit better leadership in the Senate than we do in the House.
Yeah, for sure. The media loves to portray people in the street as representing the people. The people are opposed to this person or that person. It usually ties in with who the federal government wants to get rid of. But there was a rally, and you alluded to it earlier, Dr. Paul, in your talk. And I think we have a picture of it. There was a rally, I think, yesterday in Yemen of people wanting to end this war. And this is something you won't see in the mainstream media here in the U.S. These people want to be left alone. They want the bombs to stop, to recover their lives, and no one's paying attention. In fact, just 2 days ago, and this happens all the time, but a Saudi missile, of course, made by us, supplied by us, Saudi missile struck a hospital in Yemen run by Save the Children charity. 7 people were killed, including 4 children, in this bomb, yet another hospital. Can you imagine if Maduro had done something like that, or if Assad had done something like that? He bombed a hospital somewhere. We got to take him out. You don't hear about it. You don't hear about it at all.
But it also reveals once again a term that's been thrown around here in the last few months of collusion.
Yeah.
There is collusion. There's no doubt about the kind of thing that we talk about when we talk about the deep state. There is a collusion, and it always just amazes me when somebody takes a clip from maybe the 6 or 7 top channels and they put them together. They use the same words.
Same language.
Same words that they'll use.
Incredible.
And so yes, when what you're talking about, there's a collusion. The media takes their orders, and that's why this Mueller thing is a great thing, because it's thrown a monkey wrench into some of these people who actually started believing their own lies.
Yeah.
That's to me the fascinating thing to work, because they had to know they were lying. And they knew that Trump was just vulnerable. He's a jerk, and we can get rid of him in no time. Yeah. And just listen to the way the FBI talked about him.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they're on the defensive now. It just breaks my heart that some of these people invested 2 years in lying to us, and guess what? They believe their own lies, and maybe truth wins out.
Yeah, maybe. I was reading earlier today, Rachel Maddow's audience has plunged by 500,000, so maybe they're a little angry with her. But I would just close by saying, this seems like an intractable dispute, but I really think, President Trump could probably end this tomorrow. Phone call to the Saudis, hey, the jig is up. We're no longer on board with this. You need to work this out. The Saudis aren't winning. They thought it'd be a cakewalk. They're not winning the war. All they're doing is slaughtering a bunch of people. We do have power, by virtue of our being a partner of the Saudis, to stop this war, to finally stop the horrible killing. I hope somehow President Trump wakes up and realizes he has the power to do something very good.
Very good, and I couldn't agree more with that. But I follow a philosophy that says that sometimes when you grab somebody by the shirt collar and say, do this, do that, and instruct and yell and scream, it doesn't do any good. So I've also worked on the assumption that expressing oneself and giving an opinion, if it falls on open ears and open minds, maybe it will do some good. So I guess what I'm going to tell you today is I'm not going to place that phone call to Donald Trump to tell him what he should do. I'm not going to do that for one good reason. I don't think he'll take my call. And the second reason, I don't think he's quite ready to change. But Daniel's suggestion is perfect. He should change his mind. He's changed his mind before, and unfortunately, from my viewpoint, where he's the most consistent with his campaigning and what he's doing now has been that he hasn't been on the right side of some of these issues, especially when it comes to things like Yemen and when it comes to Iran and the sanctions and this sort of thing. He sticks to his guns, but he's changed his mind before. So we offer it as a suggestion, and I have an open line in case one of his assistants wants to call and get my opinion. I'll be glad to give it, but I am not going to pretend that I'm going to point my finger and say, you do it this way or else, because I have no clout other than dealing in the world of ideas, and yet I have a lot of confidence in the world of ideas. There's a lot to be said about it. Ideas do have consequences, and they make the difference. So I don't feel like we waste our time, and I don't feel we waste our time because we have so many of our viewers communicating with us and are enthusiastic about these principles. I sense that they're a little frustrated that we don't move more quickly and that we can't just expose what's going on these resolutions, and that tomorrow the administration changes their tune, and all of a sudden we quit supporting Saudi Arabia and the war in Yemen. Let's keep working on that, though. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.